Have you ever started working on a continuous improvement project and then wondered, are we justified in doing this project? Are we really going to save the company any money? What's the benefit of doing this project? Well, in this module, we're going to talk about project benefits from continuous improvement. We're going to talk about how to calculate the return on investment from those projects, the payback period, and how to justify whether or not you should be doing these continuous improvement projects at all. And we're going to do that right now. Okay, so let's dive right in. When you are working on continuous improvement, one of the number one things you should be asking is this project actually valuable? Is it the most important thing for me to work on? And once I've done the project, did I actually benefit the company? And the way you measure that, honestly, is typically through the financial impact of the project, right? Did this project actually return some cash to the company, either in terms of new sales or cost avoidance or lower cost per unit, right? Those are the things we're going to talk about in the financial benefit analysis. So let's just dive into the financial benefit categories. Number one, increased revenue. If you increase revenue for the company, that obviously is dollars in your pocket, right? So that's a good project to work on. The second one is increased customer satisfaction. Well, that doesn't always translate into dollars, but yes, it does, because if the customers are satisfied, they're going to keep doing business with you. They'll probably tell their neighbors and their friends and give you more referrals, right? They'll likely order more from you. Maybe you can upsell them on additional products. So there's all sorts of benefits to having better customer satisfaction, and you can actually quantify that. We'll talk about how to do that. The next one is lower cost per unit. Lower material costs, lower labor costs, lower overhead costs, lower machine costs. All of those costs that go into every single unit you produce. And again, same is true for services, right? If you lower the cost of the services or the labor materials it takes to perform a service, same thing. If you work in a hospital, same thing. It's lower cost per patient, right? And then finally, the employee satisfaction. Now, how do you translate that into a dollar savings for the project? It can be difficult if you look at employees just in terms of their satisfaction as a direct labor. Does it really affect the product? No, probably not. But if you look at it in terms of turnover and productivity, well, then it matters a lot, because happy employees, satisfied employees are going to stay at their job longer. Satisfied employees are going to be more productive. You're not going to have to replace them. You're not going to have high turnover, right? So all of those things play into the employee satisfaction factor, okay? So there are three out of all those categories. There are three that are primarily used in a financial analysis for a project. Okay. Those three things are your top line revenue, your hard savings, and your soft savings. Okay. So let's look at how we can use each one of those individually to calculate the benefit of our project. Number one, top line revenue. If we've increased sales, right, we actually got new customers, or we increased the sales from existing customers. If we're able to deliver on our sales from our current customers more quickly and increase our capacity to get more sales from our existing customers, or if we're about to lose an account and we retain them because we improved our on-time delivery, right? So that would count as money that we saved the company. That is top-line revenue. Okay. Second category, hard savings. What are the main ways you can calculate the savings here? Well, you go back to your OEE, your operational effectiveness. You have three categories for operational effectiveness. You have your productivity, which is your throughput or units per hour that you produced versus your goal. So your goal was 60 units per hour. You produced 54. That's 90% of your goal, right? The second category is your availability. What percentage of the time is your equipment available to be up and running, being used, and being productive? So 90% of the time. Okay, great. So it's 90% availability. Yield. You produce 10 parts, 9 out of the 10 were good. You have 90% yield. All three of those OEE metrics can be used to calculate hard savings. You simply take the amount of material that you scrapped for your yield, and you calculate that savings for the increase in your yield. Same thing with your availability. If you had 40 hours of available time and you increased it to 50 hours of available time, that 10 extra hours is a lower cost per unit if you're producing more units. It's also an increase in revenue and top line because you can actually sell more thanks to that extra 10 hours a week. Okay. And then your performance, same thing, lower cost per unit if you reduce the number of labor hours it takes to produce a certain number of parts. So, it was taking you 40 hours to produce 1,000 parts. Now you're able to produce 1,000 parts in 30 hours. Your labor cost per unit, your material cost per unit, your overhead cost per unit, all of that goes down. Okay. The other thing that you can do to calculate hard savings is using a reduction in inventory. So anytime you can actually bring your inventory levels down, that's actually less capital that you've outlaid into inventory, less capital that you have tied up. And so there's a couple of ways you can save money on that. You can just look at if you had 20 million tied up, now you're down to 10 million tied up in inventory. That's a $10 million savings or $10 million of cash back in your pocket. But you can also look at that in terms of the weighted average cost of capital, where if you are charging yourself, say 18, 20% opportunity cost on that cash outlay, then that's 20% of, let's say you saved $1 million in inventory. That's 20% of that $1 million that you would save based on the reduction in inventory. So doing things just in time, shrinking your inventory also counts as a hard savings. And third, finally, what about soft savings? Well, soft savings are those things that are difficult to put your finger on, but there's something there, right? So for example, lower turnover rates for your employees, helping your employees be happier. Your customers feel like they enjoy interacting with you more. How do you put a number on those things? Well, we're going to get to a spreadsheet and try to dive into and show you how that might work. Okay. This also includes cost avoidance. So if we were going to have to go buy a new $1 million piece of equipment, but now we don't because we increased our efficiency and capacity on our existing equipment, I would 100% count that as a $1 million savings. We were going to spend the money. Same thing with the employees, right? If we had 40 employees and we were going to have to go hire 20 more, well, we don't have to now because we just made our process that much more efficient. Brilliant, right? We no longer have to hire those 20 people. I would count that, 20 times 60,000 a year. That's 120, 1.2 million, right? Brilliant, right? That's how much money we just saved. So those are absolutely real savings, but a lot of times companies just don't know how to calculate them, so they don't count them, and that's unfortunate. Which brings me to a question we should be asking here, which is, why are we going through all this trouble anyway? Why spend the time calculating our project benefits? Well, because number one, it's the fuel for doing more continuous improvement. If your team and your leaders and your executives all see how much money you're saving the company and all the benefits, they're going to get excited about it. They're going to put more resources behind it. They're going to say, yes, please go give me more projects, right? I want more of that. So it's worth your time, even on the smallest projects, to calculate what your savings are, right? Soft savings, hard savings, doesn't matter. Go figure out how much benefit you got out of that little teeny project and get your team excited about doing more of those. You can add them up like little trophies, right? Every time you do a project, put the savings on a piece of paper and then, taking out my microphone. Put the savings on a piece of paper and then put those up on your huddle board. And you can start to calculate throughout the year how much money you've saved the company, how much benefit you've given to the team. So there are 6 steps to documenting project savings. Let's look at number 1. You're going to start with, what are the improvements you plan to make, right? So you're doing a plan, do, check, act cycle, and you say, I'm going to make a change to this process. What is going to improve? Step number 2, quantify it. We improved throughput. Great. How much did we improve throughput? We improved yield. Great. How much? We reduced motion waste, inventory waste, transportation waste. Brilliant. How much? Put a number on it, right? The number 3, translate that into project value into something that the leadership actually cares about. So you got to translate into dollars. So we saved, 50 feet of throughput. So what? Well, 50 feet of throughput saves my team members, a half hour a day. Okay, so what? Well, that half hour a day allows us to produce 1,000 more parts a day. Oh, what's that worth? Well, they're $10 a piece. Okay, so we make $10,000 more revenue every day based on saving that 50 feet of transportation waste. Now your executive team's going to perk up, right? They're going to be like, oh, wow, that's a lot of money there. Thank you. That was a great project. Where if you just said, hey, we saved 50 feet, they don't know what that means, right? 50 feet. So what? Great. Your job's easier now. So good for you. No, they want to see money, right? So let's show them the money, or if it's us, if we're the owner of the company, right? Show us the money, right? So number 4, annualize the savings. Whatever you save, $10,000 a week, right? You get to count that for 1 year. After a year, that's the new baseline, the new standard. You don't get to count it anymore. But for 1 year, you get to count those savings, which is incredible, right? So you add it up for 12 full months, and that turns into some big numbers. Okay. Number 5, make your KPIs visible to management. So there's no point in tracking all of this if you're not going to show your team, show the executive team, show your boss, right? Make sure everybody knows how much money every single project is delivering to the company, right? Help build that additional energy around, and excitement around continuous improvement. And finally, make sure your team knows, right? The people that are actually working on the project with you, they should know, oh, at the end of this project, man, boy, we saved 50 grand, right? Wow, that's really, really cool. Okay, so those are the 6 steps to documenting our project savings. All right, let's go through a few examples here. Let's say we increased our throughput from 100 to 150 units per hour. And that means our labor per unit goes down by about 33%. So what was now $10 a unit in labor cost is now only $6 a unit in labor cost. Let's say we reduced rework from 20 units being reworked an hour to 5 units being reworked an hour, right? That's a 75% reduction. That's brilliant, right? So we can take that, and what was the cost of reworking those units? Both labor costs, material costs, right? We can take those costs and we can now add them all up for 1 year, and that's our 1 year savings for that improvement in our yield. Number 3, we reduced travel time from 30,000 feet a week to 16,000 feet a week. Again, how does that translate to dollars? Well, how much time did that save us? How many more units can we produce now? Or how much does our labor cost? And again, there's 2 ways you can calculate this. You can either go with additional revenue that we're able to generate with that extra capacity, or we can look at the labor cost of, walking those extra 20,000 feet, right? I prefer the revenue because it's a much bigger number, right? So why not? Why not go with the bigger number? Say, hey, we have this much more capacity. We can do this much more product. Brilliant. Let's do it. If we just go with the cost savings of, how much does an hourly employee cost? Those numbers will be underwhelming. They're still real, but sometimes they're underwhelming. So, why not go with the bigger number? Again, the point of calculating project benefits is to showcase how awesome continuous improvement is and the huge benefit it has to the company. So why not advertise the bigger number? All right, let's dive in. This is an example of how you can calculate the savings, but I'm going to dive into a spreadsheet here and make it a little bit more clear and easy. This is in your DMAIC Tools workbook that you got as part of this class. So you should have been able to download this already if you're watching this video. If you haven't, then you can probably get it on our website. This is the project savings tab of that worksheet. Up at the top, you have all the different ways you can save money, increasing sales, retaining sales, safety, and then you've got your 8 wastes here, okay? And then down at the bottom, you've got your project investment and your return on investment and payback in weeks, which it'll automatically calculate for you. So let's go through these one at a time. Step 1, increase sales. We just improved our process to our on-time delivery is 10 times better than all of our competitors. And now we've got an additional, $5 million in sales every year. Okay. So there you go. 5 million in increased sales. Now, because we improved our lead time, several customers that were going to leave us and go to other suppliers are now staying with us. We figure each of those suppliers is worth about $1 million, or each of those customers is worth $1 million a year. So we saved 2 of those customers this year, $2 million. Are these real numbers? Well, you just finished your project. You don't really know at this point, do you? You just have to estimate how good you think, how much impact, how much good you think your project will do, and then track it throughout the year. Maybe you estimated 2 million and maybe it's less than that. Maybe it's, only $1 million. Maybe you estimated 2 million, turns out to be 4, even better, right? So it doesn't really matter. Don't try to, kill yourself over the getting these numbers exactly right. It's just an estimate of how much benefit you think you got. Safety. Go to the OSHA website, find out what the average cost of a safety incident is. This is for, the United States. I don't remember what year I pulled this from, but, $22,000. It's probably different right now. If it's $22,000 an incident and we reduce the number of incidences from 4 a year to 2 a year, well, that's going to be 2 per year times 22,000. We just save 44 grand a year. Maybe we say we're going to reduce the number of incidents by 50%. Well, we can look at a 5-year historical, find out how many incidents per year we have on average, and reduce that by 50%, and then calculate that number. Pretty simple. All right, let's move down into the 8 wastes. So defects. Again, we've talked about this. If you improve your yield by 7% and you save 80 units a year from being scrapped or reworked, and it's $10 a unit. Pretty simple. $10 a unit times 80,000 units a year. You just saved $800,000. Congratulations. That's amazing. Overproduction. Overproduction and inventory are pretty much going to be the same thing, right? If we're overproducing, we're creating inventory that we can't ship or sell. This could be a work in process inventory as well. But let's say we reduce inventory from 60 to 50 or to 10 million a year as our average inventory. That $50 million in inventory is $50 million of cash in our pocket. So you could just say, hey, we saved $50 million in inventory, call it good. If your CFO freaks out and says, nope, you can't count that full 50 million because it's actually finance money, great. Just say, let's use the weighted average cost of capital then. Let's say we only, our money, our capital costs us 18% interest or 18% margin if we were to be deploying that capital elsewhere. So we can multiply that by the $50 million we reduced it by, and we saved at least $9 million a year based on our weighted average cost of capital. So still not 50 million, but I'll take it. I'll take 9 million all day long. All right, waiting waste. If we eliminate a couple days of waiting waste, what does that equal? Well, in my mind, I'd rather do that as additional revenue, right? If we're not having to wait for things to get done, we're now producing more. So great, right? We can count that as an increased revenue. Now, the example I have here is we reduce our delivery times by our 10%. So our online sales have increased by 10%. So you might get more sales because you've reduced the amount of waiting time for the customer, for example. So that's another very simple, great way to do it. So, let's do it. 10%. And every account that we get is worth about $1 million. So we just got $100,000 extra revenue. Brilliant. Non-utilized talent. This one's a little tricky because how do you measure if your employees are being utilized, if they have good morale, if they're happy? Well, one way you can do that is just by turnover, right? So if we reduce turnovers by 50% and it costs us about $20,000 to hire a new person and get them trained and get them productive, that's $20,000 to hire someone, and we just save 2 people a year from leaving. So that's going to be a $40,000 benefit right there. Transportation waste. Transportation and motion go together, kind of like overproduction and inventory. So for transportation, again, we use this example where we save a few thousand feet. How do we turn that into money? Well, how much time does that few thousand feet save us? How much more product can we produce? Multiply that by the revenue per part, and you've got yourself a top line revenue increase. If you want to look at it from a cost savings, if it takes 5 minutes to walk 2,000 feet, saves you $30 per hour. Or the employee's getting paid $30 an hour. So let's see, that's 5 minutes out of 60 minutes that we saved. And we're saving that times a $30 an hour employee. And we're doing that, 40 hours a week times 48 weeks a year. That's $4,800 in savings just from an employee labor standpoint, right? So not as good as a revenue, but I'll take it. Inventory, we already talked about that. Same as overproduction. I pretty much group those together. Motion, transportation, again, same thing. How much time did you save? I'd probably, again, try and do it as revenue. I saved, 60 minutes a week times 48 weeks a year, minus 4 weeks for vacation, right? And then you multiply that by, I can produce 1,000 units per hour. And I make, $10 a unit. So $28 million. Holy smokes. That's a lot of money. Okay. So the spreadsheet will automatically add all those up for you. And you're normally not going to save 45 million, but in my Greenbelt classes, consistently teams will at a minimum save at least $20,000 on a Lean Six Sigma project. I've had projects save multiple millions of dollars. It's not uncommon. So at least 20,000. Typical is more like, 50, 60,000. So let's just do that. Let's put in a typical number here. And let's say that we saved $50,000 on this project. Okay. Now down at the bottom, we can figure out what was our cost. Well, we had 5 team members working 60 hours on this project at $30 an hour. That's $9,000. We bought a $1,000 whiteboard and some other materials to work the project. So we have a $10,000 project investment. If we take that 50,000 minus the 10,000 divided by the 10,000, that's 125x return on investment, which is huge, right? That's a really good return on investment. A lot of times those numbers are so big, the financial folks won't believe it. They're like, oh, there's no way you saved that much money or got that big of a return on investment. So payback in weeks is another measure that people can wrap their heads around. if you take the amount of money you save per week and divide it by the amount of money you spent, that will tell you how many weeks it will take you to get that money back. So we spent 10 grand. It'll take us 10 weeks to get that 10 grand back, right? Let's see. Does that make sense? 50 grand a week there. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah, it does. 50 grand is per week. Yeah, that does make sense. So that's going to save us $961 a week. So yep, it's going to take us about 10 weeks, 10.4 weeks to get that back. So there you go. It makes sense. All right. So that's how you calculate the project savings. Again, quick and dirty, not real complicated. I don't want you to feel like you have to go super detailed here, that you have to be perfect in these numbers. These numbers matter because you want people to get excited about doing more continuous improvement projects. They don't matter if you want them to be like down to the penny precise, right? Just don't get wrapped up around that axle. Put some estimates in there, measure them for the next year. Some you'll do better, some you'll do worse. But always show the savings, always show the benefit, right? And if we look at, again, here's the calculations. You can see the calculations here if you want to go do those calculations on your own. They're super easy to do. This is a monthly payback, but to make that weekly, you just take your total project savings divided by 52 weeks instead of divided by 12 months. That's it. And yeah, here's some more examples of different ways you can calculate project savings. So reference this page for some additional ideas and resources. And that's it. That's the end of the project benefit module. I hope this was helpful for you. If it was, please watch our other videos. Again, subscribe and like us if you like the channel, like what you're learning here. And don't forget to check out our website for more information on training and courses and other materials that you can get to help you create an incredible culture of continuous improvement.